It's 5:04. We'll call the meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You all have seen the agenda. Are there any respective changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll restate it. There is 3 items on the consent agenda. We have 1 item of unfinished business. That's the facility funding update. We have under new business approval to negotiate contract terms with NGT of America. And that's it. Before we move to the agenda items, is there any public input on non-agenda items? Seeing none, we'll close that portion. Do we have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Anybody that wishes to pull an item on that? Okay, if not, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Next item, Fire Chief Report.
Well, good evening, Commissioners, staff, and community. As our tourist season starts to wind down, we're preparing for the wonderful 2022 hurricane season again. This year, preparedness is even more important than any year before because of supply chain difficulties and difficulties obtaining consumables. Everyone should have already started preparing themselves, but if they haven't, you still have some time. We are expecting an active season this year with potentially 21 named storms and 4 of those being major hurricanes, and where they go, who knows, but we are preparing for an active season. Interestingly, earlier today I heard an interesting statistic from our local emergency management organization, Lee County. In the last, we've seen more major hurricanes in the last 5 years worldwide than what we have seen in the last 53 years of recorded history, to give you an idea. So the storms are getting bigger and they are getting stronger. So for a barrier island district like ours, preparedness is the key for us successfully, not only preparing ourselves and our families, but our recovery efforts after those storms do occur. March and April, of course, were wonderful to observe that our community and our local businesses appears to have a very successful tourist season. While our community was bustling, meeting those demands of our local tourists and our community, the district staff and town staff held a joint meeting to discuss hurricane planning and to allow district staff and town staff to meet their counterparts and to identify ways we can efficiently work together to meet our community's needs should we be threatened by a storm. The district recently completed its driver engineer position evaluations in the emergency operations branch. We had 3 candidates. 2 were successful, and we anticipate promoting an individual. Actually, we already released a personnel record as of yesterday, and I'd like to congratulate firefighter paramedic Joe DeCastro on his promotion to driver engineer. Joe and everybody worked very hard to prepare themselves, and we're excited to see their career transitioning. The district, as you know, finalized and changed its recruitment process for new firefighters and firefighter paramedics and firefighter EMTs by partnering with the National Testing Network. The National Testing Network is really a very large benefit to the community because not only are we screening our applicants for reading abilities and mathematical comprehension and mechanical aptitude, we're also able to administer a public safety suitability assessment to make sure that they are matching what the public safety industry of today needs as far as their personality, attitudes, work ethics, things of that nature. So what that equates to our residents and our visitors is this is yet another measure that we can take to ensure that we have the best quality provider to respond to their emergency service needs. I'd like to thank Local 1826. They were a part of that partnership because we had to get Cpat Authorization, which is a candidate physical abilities test, and that approval comes through the International Association of Fire Chiefs and the International Association of Firefighters in Washington, D.C., and there is red tape on both ends, and Local 1826 helped the district out to get this critical partnership, so thank you. We are seeing, as I told you several times before, the pandemic is having a pretty profound impact on the number of people who are even interested in entering public safety anymore. So, as with every other organization, those preferred credentials of firefighter, paramedic are coming harder and harder to come by. So, we do anticipate district full staffing taking us 12 to 18 months because as a small advanced life support transporting organization, there's only so many basic level EMS providers that we can absorb. So it is going to be a long road to recover, but we will get there and we'll have the best quality candidates that we possibly can obtain for our organization. Our recently adopted standards of cover document has been extremely useful and it's being pulled off the shelf quite a bit at headquarters. We've been able to make some operational adjustments to our emergency service model based on good data and confirm that that data actually matches what the community needs. We're still providing a high quality service to our community while simultaneously limiting the impacts of mandatory overtime on our staff. As you know, and you've heard me talking and talking till I'm blue in the face, and thank you for listening to me. Forced mandatory overtime leads to fatigue, burnout, mental exhaustion, and that's not a good combination. And it's something the district must take every step we can to control. And that, let's see. So from District Human Resources, there's a good reminder that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. We join the nation to raise awareness and help fight the stigma of mental health and advocate for enhanced access to care. The district is committed to supporting our staff. We offer 2 employee assistance programs. We've partnered with Redline Rescue for our emergency operation branch folks to access quality care in an anonymous fashion with various resources available to them. So our message for this month is if you're struggling, talk to somebody. Don't suffer alone. There's tons of resources that the district can help in either advocating for you or pointing you in the right direction. Please feel free to reach out to us. We had no district anniversary dates in March. In April, we had Captain Cody Chilson with 15 years of service, Assistant Chief Chris Armiger with 7 years of service, Firefighter Paramedic Joe DeCastro with 5, Firefighter Paramedic Marlon Marin with 2, Firefighter Paramedic Joshua Diepa with 2 years, Firefighter Paramedic Fernando Manito with 2 years. On May 3rd, I had the distinct honor and privilege to promote Christopher Armiger to the rank of Assistant Fire Chief of Support Services. We wish Chris all the luck in his new position, and he is already performing at a very high level, and we're excited for him. In district finance, we have a few interesting things to report. The biggest thing that you will see shortly is October 1st, 2020, the Florida Administrative Code changed the threshold for recording property from $1,000 to $5,000 limitation for inventory purposes. The district also uses the Florida Administrative Code guidelines for depreciation purposes, as you guys are all too well aware of. For fiscal year ending September 30th, 2021, we are updating our system for the current fiscal year. The impacts of this is we're removing 300 assets from the depreciation program representing about $779,000 or 5% of the total assets. A net loss will be realized on the assets removed of approximately $368,000. However, while we are doing these moves with the CAP plan, we are going to be grouping assets that individually have values less than $5,000, but collectively have more substantial values together. And those will still be accounted for in the cap plan. So items I'm talking about is computers and SCBAs and radios. Those will remain in the cap plan. What does this result in? This results in a considerable reduction in time in the depreciation program and cap plan for our staff. Over in life safety, on March 12th and 13th, they participated with the annual Fort Myers Beach Lions Shrimp Festival, which was set up at Lynn Hall Park. They had the opportunity to engage and discuss various topics on life safety and fire safety and CPR. And it was a very successful weekend, and that's a very important partnership we have for community risk reduction. And finally, we have received, and excitingly, we've received our preliminary information for our community's 4th of July fireworks and parade. And we're looking forward to having that event once again. It's always very successful and nice to see our community rebounding. We have had 2 firefighter paramedics also that I'd like to extend congratulations that were successful in their medical credentialing. Firefighter Miranda and Firefighter Puhal, and we wish them the best of success, and they did a phenomenal job in getting that medical credentialing. That concludes my chief's report.
Great, thank you very much. Some good news, I like that. Okay, next item, unfinished business facility funding update, and Ron?
All right, commissioners, so we've been talking about this issue since we have been monitoring inflation and construction costs, and the board asked myself and staff to start looking at various funding options for our new facility and our plans for a new facility. Namely, how are we going to pay for this? As you know, construction costs, labor costs are at an all-time high, actually 40-year high. And in some types of construction, raw construction materials, we're at levels that have never been seen before in 60 years of recorded history. So the first thing that we wanted to evaluate was, and a lot of questions come up, was about the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, which was passed by the 117th U.S. Congress in March 11th, 2021, actually. And that created the Coronavirus Local Recovery Fund, the CLRF. The CLRF is a fund that the federal government created under the Department of Treasury that pushed funding down to the states, which then distributed to local governments, namely states, territories, metropolitan cities, counties, and tribal governments, and established those government units as what's known as entitled units, meaning they have primary funding priority, and the whole intent of the relief fund is to help struggling industries, low-income households, infrastructure, broadband infrastructure, water and sewer development. I thought to myself, broadband infrastructure, internet cabling, in high-powered internet. And then I realized, and I read a little bit more in research, work from home was a big thing that stressed a lot of our nation's broadband infrastructure. So it kind of makes sense. What we did find also for governmental units that are not considered entitled units, there's a provision in there called NEUs, non-entitled units, where you could apply for funding to larger entitled units, and for example, the county government, and the county government has a lot of ability to approve things. However, the caveat to that is that's subject to review by the Department of Treasury, by the state government, and it's got to align with the core principles for the funding of the American Rescue Plan Act. So you may have seen stories about Hillsborough County's constructing 5 fire stations with American Rescue Plan Act money. Well, that is true, but those fire stations are part of larger infrastructure improvements that the counties are doing, so those funds can be used to help construct it because it's related to new roadways or water and infrastructure approval. As of right now, we have not found a clear mechanism or an example of a special district funding its own infrastructure through this plan or this act. We have explored this with our local commissioners, different county administrators, and there's just no clear mechanism for us to say, hey, we need funding for a new facility. However, as I included in your packet, recently President Biden on May 3rd, 2022 made a very impassioned public statement advocating for more of these funds to be directed to our nation's first responders. However, there's been no movement. It's the federal government, so there's bureaucracies, but we will continue to monitor this funding source, potential funding source, to see if we see any new developments. Second thing we were asked to evaluate was the district issuing bonds. So we reached out to the Florida Association of Special Districts, FASDA, who referred us over to Ms. Laurel Donaldson with Manson, Bowles, Donaldson, and Varn. They are a legal firm that works with FASDA, and this is an area of their subject matter expertise. What we quickly found was that the district issuing its own bonds really doesn't provide us a benefit. One, we would need to do an economic impact study. We would have to do another study to determine the bond's value, interest rates. Then, for the term of that bond, we would need an independent bond administrator, which adds more cost to everything that we're trying to do. And then, once we have all of that identified and selected, then we have to go to referendum for the voters to approve us to issue bonds. So there's really no tangible benefit to the district based on our traditional debt services, which is a bond-like loan. Jane, did I miss anything there?
No, that captures it precisely.
Yes.
May I ask, so we would encumber those costs before we actually took it to
Referendum, yes. So you have to identify how much the bonds are going to be worth, what your term, what your interest rate is, before we actually went to referendum to see if the voter would approve us to do this. Then the last thing that we evaluated was the option of a non-ad valorem tax assessment. So this was very interesting. We again used FASDA because they are a very good partner and we're a member of them and they have extensive resources. So we worked with FASDA and Lewis, Longman, and Walker. They are, again, a subject matter expert in non-ad valorem tax assessment. Special districts, and our community may not know this, but special districts are unique. We exist for a very specified, limited scope of service that we can provide as a governmental entity. In our case, it's fire, emergency services, fire code enforcement. With that limitation of our services being a limited special purpose government, the legislators also limit the amount of accessible revenue streams to fund our operations to ad valorem tax, user fees on non-ad valorem assessments. So when you're looking at the fire service or emergency medical services or law enforcement services, these are typically throughout the nation the most costly services for any municipality to provide. We require specially trained people, specially trained backgrounds, specialized equipment, specialized vehicles. And so it is a large expense, and our primary customary source of funding is always ad valorem. So when you're providing one of the most expensive governmental services and you're limited with your stream, that's why you see special fire districts at the top of your property tax bill every year, because we are an expensive industry. We are an expense, but a very necessary expense. When people are having a heart attack or their house is on fire, they want a quick and efficient response. Non-ad valorem assessment is something we've never really explored as a district or as a taxing authority. And what that is the district would have the ability to say we want a non-ad valorem tax assessment for capital and infrastructure improvements. That would be a flattened fee in the community that would be assessed annually based on our capital and our infrastructure needs. Then it would need to go to referendum. We would have to fund an economic impact study. We would have to determine the rate of that tax assessment for the district. And that rate is set based on the size of the parcel of property, its use, and its function in the community to determine what our flat non-ad valorem assessment would be. We would have to go to voter referendum for that, which takes some time and education. And then, at that point, we would be prepared to go to referendum and ask the question. If the voters approve the referendum, then once that approval goes into place, the district would cease collecting ad valorem tax for those needs that the non-ad valorem assessment would collect. That would require different financial reporting. It would require additional staff because you can't have two people managing those two very different revenue streams. But it is a possible viable option for us to evaluate in the long term. So you may ask me, Chief, what's the plan right now? So what our plan is right now is we are proceeding with facility design, and we are proceeding to site plan development to get our site plan development order in with the town of Fort Myers Beach. We are also, at the same time with that site plan development, planning on reparceling this property. The facility, as we are coming close to a finalized design, will need approximately 1.2 acres, which will leave 0.85 to 0.9 acres of the estero frontage preserved. Once we get that work done, then we will evaluate to see, will it be feasible for us to sell this on the open market to increase our working capital, or if it's legally allowable, can we determine or find a land developer who is interested in entering a long-term land lease arrangement to develop that parcel? We still would own the land, but we could have a 30 or 40-year land lease that would help us manage the annualized debt service payment on the property. But we won't know this until we get the property reparceled, rezoned, and we've got some significant legal research with Andy to see if a land lease is even legally allowable for us to do as an independent district. It might be that we make the determination to build our working capital into going into this project by just selling that property outright. So essentially what that comes down to, as we talk about the new facility with the inflationary economy, we need more cash going into the project to reduce the debt services. We all know that there's a strong likelihood we may be heading into a recessionary economy, and we may see either some stabilization or retraction on pricing. But we need more time to build our reserves to bring more cash into this project, and more time and more money, essentially. And that concludes my section. Are there any questions?
Kind of a time frame are you, when you say we might need more time, Chief, what kind of time frame are you?
That really depends on what the economy is doing, sir. So I anticipate being in the middle of the site plan development, having that submitted in the next 3 months, realistically, barring no hurricanes. Then from there, once we get the site plan development approved, reparceling done, how efficiently and quickly we go through that process, which could take anywhere from 30 to 90 days. But I've been in close communication with our town manager. We've got kind of a plan to hopefully expedite that process a little bit and make it as smooth as possible. From there, it's going to be me coming back to this group and finding out what's the plan going forward. If we need to sell the property ahead of time to make this more financially feasible from a district overall fiscal sustainability, it might be the project is paused while we sell the property so we have cash in hand going forward. If we don't elect to do that, might be a year, might be 2 years till we actually break ground. But with a recessionary economy, if we don't, we need to raise our working cash going into this project. That's the most prudent move from a fiscal standpoint. Jane, do you have any further information that you'd like to share with the board?
No, I would just reiterate, particularly right now when, there's labor issues, there's material issues, uncertain economic times ahead. I would agree, it just makes perfect sense to some more answers anyway. And then you have more information to make a better decision.
And I know there's a lot of generalized excitement about the facility in the community, and I want to thank everybody for recognizing that need. But this is not the fun part of my job, to say we need some more time to manage your district in a fiscally responsible manner and to ensure our long-term economic outlook. So I know people don't like hearing me say this, but we're moving cautiously for a reason, because the last thing we want to do is put shovels in and say, "Oh boy, we really can't afford it," because that would that would not look good.
On the land lease option, are there any other examples of that occurring where a builder would come in or a developer would come in and lease the property on a long-term basis to do some sort of a development?
I have found a lot in the private sector. I have reached out to some local talent in the community who are professional land developers, and it is common especially with prime real estate. I just haven't been able to find a lot of governmental entities examples to provide you, but it is not an uncommon thing. Reading the Wall Street Journal and Harvard Business Review is where because I'm not a land developer, but that's where I got the idea, a land lease agreement. So it is common, especially when you have a high dollar asset in a highly desirable area where people want to retain control. And there are a few examples in the community of essential infrastructure where they have a land lease agreement for the use of the land for 30 to 50 years. And if the entity decides, well, I don't want to do it, they're still responsible for the cost of that lease to a certain percentage. So that may be an option for us, but I need to do some more legal review with Andy.
I would caution a land lease in that you all hear the comments from people. What are they going to build there? What are they in the front? Because everyone knows, well, many people know that basically we're going to sell to them. And they want liquor stores, grocery stores, Walmart, you name, parking garage. I would caution us in that we are a special district with a very singular focus. And I don't know that that would include being a landowner that's not being used by us. Now, if it's feasible, if it's legal, I mean, we have multiple options. But I would just be cautious that we lease the land to somebody and he puts up, we give up control. People are going to say, why did the fire department let them build this when everybody wanted that? That's my own concern there.
So, just so you know, Ron's mind, I was thinking, land leases along the line of something that would help solve a larger community problem would be the only way. I wouldn't want to put it up for something like a liquor store or something along those lines, something that might solve a larger community problem. But I don't even know if it's legally allowable, but it's an option we'll explore.
Well, the bottom line is, you look at the numbers. Is it best to sell it or lease it? And
Yes, sir.
do we need the money now or do we need to spread it out? I mean, we have multiple options.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
My concern is chasing an inflationary spiral. You can never catch it. So putting more money, waiting until we put more money away, and for example, if we're borrowing money, you used to be able to get 2.5% mortgage. Now it's 5.5% and going to where?
Right.
And the short-term loans are the same way. So, but I don't know if we knew what was going to happen. But right now, the property is probably as valuable as it's maybe ever going to be.
Right.
And the front portion. So I would be in favor of selling that portion, keeping the other part, and eventually.
Yes, sir. We will definitely report back to you on all these things.
John?
A couple of things. I know the town in the past has expressed a little bit of interest in some space. Have we explored the option of shifting our site plan forward and selling the back half, say, to the town for public works?
I have had a lot of communications with various entities about space or interest as far as moving public works, not specifically, but I have reached out to various entities, both private and governmental, about the potential of a joint venture on the property, or where I get to is, yeah, we like space, but we don't.
They don't want to spend the money.
Yeah, they don't want to spend the money, so.
They don't get it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So,
then I know we've talked briefly about it, but have we looked at the numbers in general for if we were to shift the millage rate to the maximum, which isn't much, what that impact would be overall for the future?
Jane and I are right in the middle of preparing our budgetary numbers. As you know, we're expecting soft numbers, and we've been doing several different models. Nothing that I'm prepared to report to you on, but we can certainly report back to you in July on that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, is there any public input on this item? Seeing none, close that portion. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, and we move on to new business. The approval to negotiate. Now I lost it. Okay, we're looking at the approval to negotiate contract terms with MGT of America LLC for statutorily mandated performance review FS 189. I will start off with information from the chief.
Yes, so for the record, this is item 9A in the agenda, the Independent Special District Performance Review Contract. As we've been talking about for a while, in October 1st, 2021, a new requirement was placed upon independent districts to conduct a special performance review by the state legislature. This is another unfunded mandate, and this will require us to do the initial performance review starting October 1, 2022, and every 5 years thereafter. The copy of this report gets submitted to the Auditor General along with our budget and the governor's body with the state. We do not submit our report this round to the office, OPAGA, with the state, which works directly with the Florida legislators. Only mosquito controls and the water and sanitation district this year is required to submit to OPAGA in Tallahassee. This is a costly endeavor. You may have gone through your packet and said, this looks similar to the strategic plan, but if you look at the statute, what we're measuring is a little bit different than what our strategic plan measures. They're looking at the performance budget. They're going to be looking at redundancies and services between the district and other governmental units that we cover. So, for example, they're going to look at, is there any redundant level of service between us and the town of Fort Myers Beach? Is there any redundant level of service between us and Lee County? If the answer is yes, how efficient are we doing that versus partnering with the county or consolidating with the county or the town on those functions? They're going to look at how we are performing based on our adopted benchmarks and our standards of cover, and look at our budgetary use. They're going to be looking at the current year as well as 3 fiscal years prior. So it's similar to our strategic plan, but it's slightly different than our strategic plan because they are looking specifically at how we are performing in meeting what's stated in our adopted charter. We had convened an RFP committee. I want to thank all the committees headed by Director Thompson, all the committee members who participated in reviewing the 2 submittals that we had. We received one submittal for $91,920, and then we received another submittal from the proposed vendor that I have in front of you tonight for $74,272. It's my recommendation and staff's recommendation that we follow the RFP committee and go with MGT of America and move forward with this required unfunded mandate from the state.
This is the $74,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay, first I'll ask for any public input on this item, assuming you have none. Close that portion. Okay, discussion. Jim, you start?
So the scope of this is to basically evaluate how effective we are as a fire district. Is that really, would that sum it up?
I would say effectiveness, efficiency, and redundancies.
Okay. And how long is this going to take?
I anticipate, based on feedback from other jurisdictions, I would anticipate, hopefully, this should take about 6 to 7 months for us because we have an adopted strategic plan. We have an adopted standards of cover. We have our measurement and performance standards in place. However, a lot of our neighboring jurisdictions have said this is going to take every bit of the 9 months. That's why I wanted to get this in front of you early. Finalize the contract terms with Andy's review and get this process starting because, as you know, we have a pretty heavy workload administratively, and this is taking a lot of staff time in our neighboring jurisdictions. I'm hoping 6 months, but realistically, it might take the whole time frame.
It is going to require a considerable amount of staff time.
Yes, sir. I'm anticipating a considerable amount of staff time. Yes.
So the real cost will be well above $75,000 to go with this one because it'll be the cost of
Yes.
time for our staff.
Yes, sir. And the other very unique thing is, yes, you may wonder why haven't we gone with a vendor who's already done work or strategic plan work or standards of cover. Statutorily, we're not. The legislators wanted independence in this evaluation. So we could not have selected a vendor that we have done previous work with in the past 5 years. So that necessitated us identifying another vendor. This particular vendor is also listed through FASDA as one of the preferred vendors to conduct this type of work as well.
May I ask, how frequently does this kind of an evaluation have to be conducted?
Well, this is the first of its type for independent districts. This is new. And then after this report, we will be on a 5-year schedule. Every 5 years, we will have to repeat this exercise if there's no change to Chapter 189 of the Florida statutes.
Based on the statute, we would not be allowed to use the same firm to do this again.
On the next cycle.
We can't work with a vendor that we worked with before.
My interpretation of the legal statute, if it stays, we'll probably have to select another vendor potentially, but we'll see what guidance comes out after this first round. This is making a profound impact, particularly in northern Florida and the Panhandle, where you have large paid combination departments who may have $1 million operating budget, and they're getting prices of $150,000 because of the size and complexity of their organization. So there is a lot of concern being expressed to our state legislators over this process because it is making impacts on some essential services that have limited funding options. We're fortunate. We've budgeted for this. It's coming higher than what we budgeted or anticipated, but in line what we're seeing with other districts in the surrounding area.
If they get enough complaints, in other words, things could improve, things could get worse.
Chief, do you know if there's a minimum that this type of company would charge? Let's say they have a small district, water district. I mean, with not many employees.
I can tell you from what I'm hearing from our partners in FASDA, prices are going anywhere from $35,000 as high as almost $200,000 for independent districts. So, and the larger the district and the more complexity, the more money. So that has been, there's a wide range that's going. that's occurring.
If the or the thought of minimum is around 35,000, I guess we're not doing too big, 7.
Yeah, we're in line with what other districts of similar complexity. We're a little bit unique. So we may have 3 stations, but as a district, we are an incredibly complex organization. We not only have traditional fire response, but we have internalized services, HR, finance, code enforcement, permitting, as well as EMS transport, which makes us incredibly complex, small but incredibly complex organization. A lot of matrices to measure.
I'm surprised at the numbers and I'll be interested to see where this goes. It's been a concern since it was brought up in the legislature and passed, and we've been talking about it for months, so I guess we have to do it, you don't have a choice, but I'll be interested to see where it goes with smaller districts who perhaps can't even afford something of this magnitude.
A couple of general questions, actually. How many of these independent companies exist?
Well, not many because of the qualifying criteria in the statutes. So that's one thing that's impacting cost, I'm sure. And they have to have, by statute, they have to have specific expertise in conducting these type of work. So if you look at MGT's proposal, you'll see a lot of work at county performance audits, school district performance audits. So they have a specialized level of background in performance, statutorily mandated performance reviews.
So they're held to a standard before
Yes.
they even qualify to do
Before
this
they
job.
even qualify. So to give you an idea, we budgeted approximately $65,000 for this project. So that was based on the first blush that when this legislation was coming out, where we anticipated. So we're $9,000 under what we anticipated this study costing. And I'm assuming as more and more districts, October 1, more and more districts, the demand grows. Well, we know what happens with price as demand grows. So I think we've got a good price, and the RFP committee did a great job vetting these 2 respondents. So,
We're not required to have 3 bids on this process.
Jane?
No, we actually, that's set by internal policy.
Okay.
Whereas the construction RFQ required 3, our internal policy called for a minimum of 2. But there are not many firms that can meet the state's criteria.
Thank you.
Right, and also when we're looking at things like professional services for architecture, engineering, there's a completely different set of statutes we have to comply with, the CCNA, for example. So, and that requires a certain number of bidders. So
what will happen is that there will not be enough companies that meet those strict standards. And when everyone has to do this, that's when it crashes. And they say, well, we don't have enough people. They'll either have to soften the standards or change the statute. You can't do them both. If there's 1,000 that need the service and they can only provide enough for 10, they're going to be stuck. Right? You can't close down a fire district because you can't find this company or type of company. So that'll happen. I have a question. Our work with Dr. Bannon, is that required? The strategic plan, is that statutorily required?
Is statutorily required? I don't believe it is. We are required to do a facility assessment by statute, but as far as a strategic plan, that is more under a best model scenario, best business model. So we're actually making our decisions based on what the community wants, but we are required to do a facility report in lieu of that if we don't have an adopted strategic plan.
And the facility report is not covered under this current statute?
No, our strategic plan and our reporting that we have sufficiently covers us there. So to give you an idea, between the standards of cover and what was approximately $40,000 for us to do. Our strategic plan was approximately $12,000, so $52,000 between those two documents. So the strategic plan is a best practice. Obviously, I would recommend that we continue to fund that project, and the standards of cover will be good for some time before we have to revisit that, unless we make some major emergency service model changes in the next 1 to 3 years. Then we would probably redo that, or maybe even do it ahead before we finalize that decision.
So I see a lot of redundancies between the strategic plan and this new project.
Yes.
And if we can, I guess 12,000 in the scheme of things is not that much for the strategic plan, but let's keep an eye on that and see whether there's a way to combine a couple of those issues and lower the cost.
Yes, sir.
So,
It's my understanding on this requirement, it's more to the point on how we do business, not what business we're in.
Yes.
So that applies to all the special districts, where the other two reports that we have been doing are geared towards our organization and how we function and how we plan for the future. So yeah, I can't see, unless something changes with either side, that we could eliminate anything at this point.
well, I agree. Well, we'll have to see how this all shakes out.
Right, I agree.
When would you anticipate you would get started on this, and would it behoove us to get out ahead of other folks doing it, so that we don't get caught up in a logjam, as Larry mentioned?
If you approve me, we've already sent the tentative contract for Andy's review. If you approve me tonight, my intention is to get started with this company as soon as possible. So we're not delayed, and my staff has some time to help us work through this project, because I do anticipate this taking quite a bit of staff time. So.
And then would you anticipate we'll see any redundancies once that come out in this report? And I believe that's what they're looking for.
The only redundancy that I anticipate right now is I see the potential redundancy in them looking carefully at our emergency medical services, because the county offers that service. The town, is specifically in Florida Statute 633, the town cannot be the fire authority for fire code and inspection purposes. Neither can the county. That specifically resides with the district. And there is no other fire service provider. Now, if they're going to compare us perhaps to other districts, but I don't think that's the legislative intent. It's looking for more of the governmental entity as there bleed over between the town and the county and the special district's purpose, which when it comes to essential fire services, there isn't, because neither entity provides that. So I would say where they'll probably look at us a little bit cautiously will be with our emergency medical service division. That's what I'm anticipating, but I might be surprised because nobody has really seen anything.
Yeah, I
So,
would agree.
so when we get the report, then is there teeth in it? In other words, if they show a redundancy in that area, do we have to reconcile that?
No, not specifically. The report will be filed with the legislators. What happens once this report is filed? That's the question mark. What they're going to do with this data is still a question mark. The Lee County Fire Chiefs Association has been monitoring this for a long time through FASDA, through the Florida Fire Chiefs Association. That's still the unknown. What are they going to do once they receive this data? We don't know.
Well, they'll be inundated with reports from, and not have the staff to handle them or even know what they're doing with it. They'll just be filed somewhere, and we'll do it again 5 years from now. Well, any other items before any other discussion items? Okay, so then you're asking for a motion, I assume.
Yes, sir.
And let's see. So,
You want me to read that, Larry?
if you'd like,
Sure.
I lost my computer.
Make a motion to allow Chief Martin with the review and approval of Attorney Salzman to execute a contract with MGT of America LLC for the purpose of performing the Independent Special District Performance Review.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion before I call the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chief. Next is your remarks.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for another wonderful meeting. We're making a lot of great progress. As a reminder, this Friday at Station 32, we will be doing some contract negotiation with District 3. So I'm looking forward to a positive and productive movement there. We are also continuing to work through our revision and our policy and procedure manual, which is exciting. We're getting ready to start rolling that out to our officers so they have some time before we start pushing out new policies to all the rank and file. Want to thank my staff, and it takes a lot of prep work for these meetings to go off without a hitch, so thank you to all of them. And then finally, not to close the meeting on a somber note, but I would like to ask our community and everyone to keep the victims, the families, and the first responders, law enforcement, and medical providers who were impacted by the Robb Elementary School massacre yesterday, and letting them know they're not alone during their time of mourning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, next item, we have no attorney reports, so we'll go to commissioner remarks. You'd like to go first, Jackie? Would you care to?
No, thank you for another very good meeting. I appreciate all the work that goes into these and all the time we all take to put them together. I'm frustrated that we have to spend money on a report like this that we know probably won't get looked at for a long time, but I understand the need for it. I understand where they're trying to go with that, so I appreciate you getting us out ahead of that so we don't get bogged down with everyone else. Let's just get it done and get it put to bed. Also wanted to share condolences to the Chartier family for the loss of their daughter Sophia. She is one of our island children here and lost her unfortunate battle with cancer and has gained her angel wings. They will have their a fundraiser on Saturday at Shamrock. So if anyone can come out and join for that, I think the family would certainly appreciate that. Please keep them in your thoughts as well. And thank you to all of you.
Jim?
Thanks. Mary. I would like to thank the chief for his remarks I saw on Facebook regarding the shooting incident that occurred. It was exceptionally well stated, and I appreciate that you represented the district so effectively in those remarks. But they're difficult. They're difficult to respond to, and you did, I thought, an exceptional job. I also wanted to thank you for your appearance at the public safety meeting for the town of Fort Myers Beach. And it was I kind of like to clarify the issue that was discussed there, that the public safety committee brought up regarding the traffic signal at Linnell and Estero. In some of the media reports, I don't know whether there's a misunderstanding or they're conflating the terminology. Some of the reports were saying you were advocating for walk flashers. Other reports indicated you were advocating for a traffic signal that would assist pedestrians as well as vehicles in and out of that street, and then of course would assist our fire apparatus as it exits onto Estero Boulevard. So I was being on that board, I was at a meeting and I listened to your comments, and I was under the impression you were advocating, or at least you would like to see a traffic signal at that location that the district could control so that our apparatus could come out, would turn red all four ways. The apparatus could safely get onto Estero Boulevard. But am I right about that's what you were suggesting, or that when other people and there were a lot of comments people were making, they were all talking about the walk flashers that we're all familiar with that we see at some of the crosswalks there, And I thought, I don't think that's what we're talking about here. I think we're talking about a traffic signal that would control vehicular traffic, pedestrian traffic, and allow for safe access and egress of our fire apparatus onto Estero Boulevard. Is that correct?
Yes, Commissioner. So, social media being what it is, they see the word traffic signal, but forget to hear the words emergency traffic signal. So what we have been a proponent of for a long time at Station 33, one, for pedestrian safety, because we know that's a very busy crossing location, and two, for our first responder safety pulling out onto Estero Boulevard, an emergency traffic signal similar to what you see in front of Station 31 and Station 32, which we control when our units are getting ready to respond. The last person in the truck hits a button and it describes exactly, we get the green, everybody else has the red. With this particular traffic signal, there are emergency traffic signals that also have a design for pedestrian crossing as well. So a group of pedestrians could activate the button and cross safely at that location as well. However, what's necessary to accomplish that is our signal has to always override a pedestrian request to cross Estero Boulevard. So we are advocating for a dual-purpose emergency traffic signal at that location. I would be happy with an emergency traffic signal to protect our guys and gals, but if there's an opportunity to enhance pedestrian safety crossing at that location, then let's look at that. But we with the traffic volume getting higher and higher, with an increased incidence of driver frustration in this community. This year, there was more frustrated drivers than I've ever seen, and that's based on my observation and the anecdotal evidence. I don't have studies or data to point it up. I just saw more aggressive driving on the island than I've ever seen in the last 20 years. So with increases in driver frustration, my first concern is to the guys and gals responding to the emergencies and the community as a whole. So if there's an opportunity to collaborate to get an emergency traffic signal that serves a dual purpose, this is a great opportunity, and we got some champions at Town Hall. Thank you for your service on that committee as well as to Councilman Allers and Town Manager Hernstead for joining us and advocating for that.
Okay. Well, that's helpful. I for one envision this as a traffic control signal.
Right.
That would control vehicular traffic, pedestrian traffic, and allow for emergency access of our equipment.
Yep.
But I guess there are a lot of hoops that have to be jumped through. You have FDOT involved, you have the county involved, and then the town and us. And we're all going to have to get on, I think, the same page, and we all may have to spend a little money to make that happen for our community. But I think it would be well worth our time, our effort, and if we have to spend a little money, even some of the district's money to make that happen, I would be certainly supportive of that, because I think it would enhance safety there, particularly in season when they're doing the fair thing that they set up there, the market, a couple times a week. There's a tremendous amount of pedestrian traffic during that time. Otherwise, thank you for a great meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Ron?
Of course, we all know you see something on Facebook, it's false. Just because it's on TV doesn't know the reporters get it backwards a lot. As of the school shootings, it's terrible. Our country is awash in military-style weapons that have no business being sold to anyone. That's just me. Thank you for the meeting. A lot of good information. I like that we're tiptoeing into the computer age. There's some glitches, but it's fine. It's good. As to the hurricanes, I'm doing my part to make them go away, because I just did a test run on my generator, and I have enough fuel to run it for, I'm not telling you how long.
Is that like when you wash your car, it never rains, or it always rains?
Well, it's worked. I've done a couple things, so it has worked. On Sunday, our former mayor, Anita Saracito, was coming home from the hospital. She needed help getting into her house. She got a hold of my wife. I said, of course they'll do it. You know, they pick you up when you fall on the floor. They'll carry you into the house. In fact, they did it for Jan 3 years ago when she broke her leg. So they got her in. They were very pleasant. Anita called us, thank you. The crews were great. What can I do to thank them? I said, well, they always welcome sweets. And she said, great, I'll send them tomorrow. I said, no, send them Wednesday. The guys tomorrow had nothing to do with it. Well, she ended up sending it on Tuesday. So, and I know what would happen when somebody delivered something to us and we didn't do it. We just ate it. So hopefully they saved a couple of whatever Anita bought. But I'm thinking not. But really though, Anita was very pleased. Her, like most, don't know that the fire service does things like that. If you need help getting in your car, coming home from the hospital. We take you to the hospital, we should be glad that when you get home. Looking forward to our formal promotional ceremony. Thank you, Chief.
Great, thanks. John?
A lot of it's already been said. Thanks to everybody for a great meeting, putting it together. The new arrangement is a little broader, I think, than last time. But I like the setup that folks can come in without disturbing us if they're arriving a little late. Thanks to our union rep who came tonight to listen to us go on about things that we can't control, but we have to make decisions about. And great meeting, everybody. Thank you again, Chief.
Thank you.
I was going to thank Angie for being our audience tonight, doing our public comments. Thanks for showing up. And the layout, what do you think? The town council set it up like this when they were redoing town hall. So the town council met like this, and I remember, maybe a tweak here and there, but I think it kind of makes sense. I felt bad the last meeting, the firefighters had to crawl under the thing, then they had to pass chair, then they had to crawl back underneath. That seemed kind of awkward to me. So, and one last thing, I was looking through some information about the fire department and I learned a new word, envenomation.
Envenomation.
Do you know what that means?
Yes, that's when you are bitten by something that's injecting venom into your body, whether that's a spider, whether that's a snake, whether that's a scorpion.
And I had to look it up because I knew what venom was, but it's E-N, venomation, envenomation. So I learned a new
Word of the day.
Word of the day. So with that, if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.